Hi everybody, Professor Snart checking in here. As we move into our next unit, so I'm just checking in our due dates. I'm recording this on Wednesday morning, and our next due date coming up is Friday, July 8th. So once again, right around the corner for us. Yeah, moving pretty quickly, right? But the good news is that just looking at our past units, we've done introductions, so that's all good. We've figured out the nature of creation, of the universe, of the world, of mankind. We've understood then everything there is to know about epic and being a hero, so I expect much better behavior on everyone's part, including myself. And now, within the next couple of days, we'll just work out the roots of spirituality. Piece of cake, right? Always fun. Okay. In this unit then, like the title of the unit suggests in some of this preliminary reading, we really are looking at various kinds of religious writing from various different cultures and thinking about, like I'd said actually in an earlier announcement, some of the differences but some of the similarities as well. So this is a tricky unit just because we are dealing with religious writing that not just for Christians obviously, but for anybody for whom religion plays a major role in their life. This kind of writing has a special kind of powerful meaning. Regardless of the tradition, right? And so we want to, as best we can, kind of remove ourselves from that position of being invested in just one certain kind of tradition or certain text as spiritually or religiously meaningful, and just read from a more kind of historical or almost in a more detached way. Not that the readings can't be powerful for you, but they need to be powerful in a slightly different way, or you need to enter into them with a sort of openness to be impacted or to see the value of not just your particular tradition, if you have one, but of any or all different traditions. So it's good to enter into these readings with that in mind, so you're not kind of really going in a little bit prejudiced for or against one particular tradition. And they're all pretty compelling. I mean, I have to admit, regardless of what your cultural or spiritual background is, these are, like so much of what we read, they're so fascinating, but I think maybe even more so because they are such fundamental texts for huge numbers of people, both now, but in the hundreds or thousands of years that they've existed. So ironically, we need to treat these texts as not necessarily as powerful or extra textual with all of this stuff around them in terms of spiritual meaning for people, but that's precisely why they're really interesting to read. So once again, we find ourselves in a bit of a world-lit dilemma here. And then this the work of art that I have is the very first thing in our unit. I explain that I first ran across this, as it's alluded to in a great little novel by Thomas Pynchon called The Crying of Lot 49. And if you're not a Pynchon fan or haven't read his work, I would really suggest starting with this one. Starting with anything else is probably a bad idea, which if you've read Pynchon's work or if you subsequently do, you'll understand exactly what I mean. But anyway, this great piece from what I think is a triptych by Remedios Varo is so kind of evocative, and I'm looking at it right now so you can check this out too. There's a series of women up in a tower, and they're weaving this sort of magical or mystical looking thread from being created by this guy who's reading a book. And of course the thread that they weave becomes the very world that they're a part of as it spills out of the windows. So it's really kind of creepy and evocative. It's like magical but kind of realistic, I want to say, in the sense that we often create our own realities. So it just seems compelling in a way that often these kinds of texts are as well, because there's so much about how we create our own realities by telling the stories about them. And I think what's even more fascinating about this Remedios Varo piece is not the creation of the world as it exists outside, so that complication of like what's internal and what's external and what we see objectively out there versus what we sort of create in that act of seeing. but the fact that the thread that they weave with is the product of this strange masked figure mixing a potion or something, but also reading a book at the same time. So I think it's that little twist to it that really makes it compelling for me. So anyway, it's a good kind of mind bender to get things going as we get into the readings for this particular unit, but actually a lot of the readings that we run into really either explicitly or implicitly deal with the nature of how we create the world around us, or to what degree we create the world around us in the very act of our trying to apprehend it. So lots to think about as we figure out the roots of the roots of spirituality and world religions in that'd be a couple days now. All right. As usual, if you have any questions, be sure to be in touch with me. Oh, and just a reminder to read carefully with the directions. I think there's some units that ask you to respond to just one other student discussion board essay, and some that require two, just to mix things up a little bit. So be sure you're reading carefully and doing the full number, otherwise you don't get full credit for the unit. Okay, a lot to think about, a lot to say. Again, check into the gradebook, make sure that you're getting credit for the work that you've completed, and if you do have any questions, just be in touch with me.